Okay, so I'm going to put my hand on my heart when I say this. I believe in the United Nations system.
Mm.
I do. But I spent a lot of time in five-star hotels eating really good food talking about poverty. There was a pretty big disconnect between where most of the United Nations people were and where the action was. And that's simply because, by definition, that's what the United Nations is supposed to do. It's supposed to be the non government organizations doing that. But uh, because my mandate in the United Nations said, learn about the issue and disseminate and educate the governments about this, I felt like I needed to get much closer to the action. So I spent a lot of my UN time in the field. And we even set up a hotline within our office to collect information. And eventually we were evaluated, and they kind of slapped my hand and said, you're not supposed to be doing any of this. You're helping people. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to help the people who help the people. So, my difficulty with the United Nations is that as an institution, how can you know what you need to do unless you're in the thick of it? And so I happen to have had years of NGO and government and various other experiences that allowed me to understand what I was doing. But there were a certain number of academic people there who were in HIV/AIDS or human trafficking who had never met a trafficking victim. It was all esoteric, it was theoretical. So much of the work that is done is by the non-government organizations all over the world. They're the ones that do the prevention programs to help people to not get into human trafficking. They're the ones who help with the raids and the rescues, and then have the shelters, and then after that, basically try to go after the criminals. But since out of the 40 million people, 25 million is in modern or forced labor, and 60% of that is associated with supply chains, the businesses have to be involved. So the banks have to be involved. The manufacturers have to be involved because they have supply chains and the potential for factories that could be exploited. And hotels have to be involved because you have sex trafficking that takes place there. And so much of this goes back to your question earlier, Charmaine. What do we need to do? We need to open up new fronts. We need the private sector involved. We need more faith-based groups involved. We need the students involved. We need the general public, but we need them to be at a level where there is almost a turning point where people say, like the global warming, enough is enough. This